Okay, Ashley. So, tell me a story about like your best learning experience.
I would say my best learning experience was in college when I had a lot of hands on experiences in labs since I was a biology major. Favorite memory with that would be my genetics lab,
Mm-hmm.
where we had a lot of hands on activities where we were able to actually make flies and watch the outcomes of the genetic variations.
Cool. And so, like, why was it so great? Why was it so awesome?
I think because in the classroom we did a lot of learning of the vocabulary and this, that, and the other, and also looking at diagrams, but it was just really different once we got into the lab and actually got to see things and do things hands on.
Cool. So it sounds like hands-on was like a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what about like your worst?
My worst experience was my first composition class in college. I had a professor which she just pretty much came to the class with a really negative vibe as far as forget everything you learned in high school. Now you have to learn a whole new way. And the entire year I was just very uncertain of my writing because I didn't feel confident that I would do well because everything that I had already learned was not relevant to what I was doing then.
So, like, she was just unapproachable, like from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
So it just made you feel like you weren't able to do anything.
Right. I kind of felt like I was already put into a corner and I couldn't get myself out of there. So,
yeah, it's really good job.
All right. So, Anna, explain to me one of your best experiences or great learning experiences.
So I think one of my best, it's kind of hard to narrow down, would actually be probably from grad school. I had a professor that actually took like 3 different times. And I think I took her because she was very relationship oriented. I mean, she was challenging. She definitely challenged us and she had high expectations, but she didn't make the class arbitrary or make it hard just because, oh, you're in grad school, like this is supposed to be difficult. And she really focused on what our individual needs were, and she made the learning like on us. Like you almost felt bad if you didn't do the reading and come to class ready to discuss it. And I mean, she would have never known if you hadn't done it or weren't prepared. But the motivation became intrinsic because of the way that she structured her class. And so I just really appreciated that she like cared about us so much. I mean, so much to the point like I still see her and I graduated several years ago. So,
Right.
yeah, I really liked that about it.
So she established that relationship with her students to build an understanding.
Yeah, and so it made the class more enjoyable and it made you want to learn. So,
good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell me now about one of your worst experiences.
So, I think one of the worst, also grad school. And kind of on the other hand, I had a professor who it literally was just arbitrary. Like you felt like sometimes he was just giving you work just to make it hard. There was no relationship and he was just like piling it on just to pile it on to make, oh, this is grad school. You should be used to this. And so you just felt like there was no purpose to what you were doing. You were just doing it to get the grade. And you also didn't get very good feedback. And so you're just kind of like, what am I doing this for? And then when you finally did get your grade, you couldn't correct it. And so it was just there was no relationship, there was no communication. So as a student, it was really frustrating to like try to do your best because you didn't feel like there was a reason to.
So kind of just like going through the motion of things and not really having relevance.
Yeah, exactly. There was no relevance. Obviously, there was no connection, no authenticity.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like from what you were saying, your most meaningful lessons were because they were like hands-on, and then what was lacking was because there was no relationship, or they weren't approachable. So like that probably would have transformed your lessons quite a bit had it been the other way around. Like if that one professor had been super like approachable. So like how would you bring that into like what's getting ready to happen here in a couple weeks?
I think I'm going to definitely establish relationships in my classroom. And then that allows students to be able to come to me and ask questions if they're uncertain of things. Because in a science lab, there's a lot of things you're very uncertain about all the time.
Right.
So I think I'm going to definitely build those relationships so that my students can ask those questions. And then that allows me then to bring in those hands-on with with the learning that's going to go on in my classroom. So those kids can also have that type of experience, because it's very different now. We don't just go from the book and do the vocabulary, do the questions at the end of the chapter. And I feel like a lot of my science classes were like that too. So I feel like as those experiences, I'm going to bring those into my classroom so that my kids can have a better experience in the science classroom.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
So, and as far as yours are very complete opposites of each other, and they are still really related because they're based off of relationships. You had one professor that established those relationships, and you have one professor that did not, and kind of just went through the motion. So I know that your job title is a little different. How would you bring that into all of the things that you're doing here?
Well, I think when I was in the classroom, relationships were always the key part of reaching students who might be a little bit more hesitant. And I think that's going to be key with this job, because there's so many things that are happening with the redesign, and so many things that are happening with having half a new staff, and, you know, people don't know me. And so I think relationships are going to be important as far as, okay, like, you don't know me, and I'm going to be popping up in your classroom. So I've got to kind of form a trust that's a huge part of it right there. But also just with my institute and with the staff as a whole, I think trust is important, relationships are important, because if you don't have somewhat of a good relationship, then all the things I say to you, there's no credibility. There's no, like, anything. I kind of have to walk alongside you. And that's kind of how I see it, is and that's how I see that professor actually that I worked so well with, is it wasn't like a preach at you. She walked alongside you.
Okay.
And so I think that's kind of how I see myself, is not sitting in this office, you know, oh, let me tell you what to do, and I'm just going to go sit in my office now. Like, I want to walk alongside people and do this PBL thing and all the things that we're going to be doing this year. So I think it's a huge part of it, so I'm excited about that.
Great.
So, and that's our video.